Welcome to Week 8, Module 8. This module is going to cover a perspective on ethics. And when we say ethics, we're not talking about the moral right and wrong. One should do this, one should not do that. Although these things are related, the kind of ethics we're speaking of here has to do with how to live, which, again, boils down to what you should and should not do. But the point is what you should and should not do in order to live a happy existence, which is what philosophers have been concerned with for thousands of years. Like, what does it mean to live a happy life? Like, what is the good life? Like, what must we do? How should we think? Like, what does that look like? So we're going to look at a definition of happiness as it is represented in an excellent film called The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith. It's a great movie. You're going to like. I think you'll enjoy it. I can't find much about the film that I don't like. I like Will Smith. He was the Fresh Prince. So, he seems to be able to do no wrong in my eyes because he was the Fresh Prince. But really, The Pursuit of Happiness is a film based on the life of a real individual named Chris Gardner. And he wrote a book about his life and a lot of, the historical accuracy about some of the key events in this man's life and how he literally went from being homeless to rising to the upper class over a period of time while raising his son single-handedly as a single father. And it's in San Francisco. That's the setting. So I love San Francisco. I think it's one of the greatest cities in the world. But it's probably the worst place to be poor. And you can sort of witness that today with many, many homeless people living on the streets. Apart from the excellent climate that makes it pretty tolerable to live outside year-round, it's a very expensive city. It's overpriced. Real estate, even more so now than what the film will represent. So every time I watch the movie, I always think, man, this guy could have maybe had more success if he was in Texas. But anyway, the film's set in San Francisco based on the life of Chris Gardner. And there's some philosophy that's sort of woven into the film that reflects back on what we talked about earlier in the course when we were on campus, and has to do with the good life, the pursuit of happiness. What does that even mean? Like, what, when we find this statement in the Declaration of Independence, like, that's a very subjective term to say happiness. Like, what is happiness? Life, liberty, private property, the ability, the freedom to pursue happiness. These are very philosophical terms. So in order to sort of get also a grip on the cultural interpretation of The Pursuit of Happiness, read the article by Ren Junhong, which is, to me, I love reading what we call Etic perspectives, which is someone who's an outsider. So how does a scholar in China view an American film and the representation and those philosophical ideals and concepts of American society, which are very different than the philosophical norms and values in China? Like, how then does one observe from the outside, which is a valid perspective? Some people think, well, in order to understand something, you have to be an insider. I think that's an excellent perspective that needs to be given, but I also believe that we need the outside perspective when it comes to scholarship, in order to understand how history and culture and ideas are received on a global or human level, rather than restricting to the fine, narrow focus of one particular culture or society. So it's all a human experience, and that's what this course is about. So I've drawn upon an edict outsider source to give a cultural interpretation of the pursuit of happiness. So read that article, and then watch the film, and then for your discussion, you're going to evaluate a specific statement from the movie. And the quote is, "And it was at that time that I thought about Thomas Jefferson writing that Declaration of Independence, him saying that we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I thought how he knew to put the pursuit in there. Like, no one can actually have happiness. We can only pursue it." So I want you to think about that statement. Is he right? Is that true? Can we actually achieve happiness? Or is it about the pursuit of happiness that's the ultimate good? And so also I want you to think back to what we talked about in our discussion on philosophy and find some perspective, whether maybe it was Stoic or Epicurean. Can you think of any examples in that worldview, that philosophy, that supports this idea that we can't actually be happy? All we can do is pursue happiness. And maybe that's the greatest level of happiness, is having the freedom and the ability to pursue happiness. Because again, we think that we can satiate our wants and desires, but can we? And if we ever do, is it not just merely temporal? I mean, you think, I want all of this stuff, and you get all of this stuff, and somehow you can still find a way to want more. So these are important human questions that I think we should ask, and we should think about, and we should write about, and we should talk about. And so engage in your discussion, and refer to the article on the cultural interpretation of the film. And again, same rules apply. 300 words for your initial post, quote from the sources, the film, and respond to 2 separate peers with at least 150 words to each of them. And be critical, engaging. Don't be general. Don't be effusive or overly agreeable. You're going to also submit a film review for this movie following the format that's in the film review guide that I've given you. And this module is also the end of the course. So there's a few things we need to say here. The class ends on Thursday, so you need to have your initial post by Wednesday, and then you need to have both of your follow-up posts by Thursday. But that's not all you're going to do this week, because you also have a final exam, and you are going to submit your fine arts visit response, reflection, writing. All of that is due by 11:59 on Thursday. So that's the end of the course. That's the end of the road. Unless you've made some sort of prior arrangements with me, I will not be accepting any late work beyond that cutoff time, because the course is simply over, and our agreement, our contract is over, and I'm not obliged to continue accepting things unless we've worked it out. So that is when they stop paying me, essentially. So if you want something beyond the cutoff date, just let me know. We can talk about it. But if I haven't heard from you and you try to submit something, you will not receive credit. Okay, that is the overview, summary, introduction for Module 8, Week 8, Perspectives on Ethics, Defining Happiness.